Some Conservative MPs are teaming up to tackle what they're calling civil liberties issues. As many as 30 members are working to form a new group within caucus. Among their priorities, finding ways to accommodate Canadians who choose not to get vaccinated. Ontario Conservative MP Marilyn Gladu is leading that effort. She is in Hamilton, Ontario. Ms. Gladu, thank you very much for speaking with us today. I'm wondering if you can start by explaining what is the Civil Liberties Caucus and what does it stand for?
Well, Katie, thanks for having me. Basically, when we went back to Ottawa to meet as a caucus, a number of the MPs were talking about issues we had heard from our constituents. And we thought, well, let's get together and talk more about this. And then more MPs and senators heard and said, yeah, we're hearing these things as well. We'd like to get along and join. And so really, it's early days yet, but there are a number of issues that have arisen based on, the vaccines and vaccine mandates that have come into place, and people are losing their jobs across the country without reasonable accommodation in some cases, and, citizens are concerned. So this working group will talk to medical experts, legal experts, ask the questions that Canadians are asking, and bring back recommendations for our policy consideration at National Caucus.
So do you see the work that these caucus members are going to be doing as advocating for those who are not getting vaccinated?
Oh, not at all. I mean, our party's been clear that we encourage everyone to get vaccinated, but the reality is there are some that, for various reasons, choose not to get them, and we need to ensure that we're using reasonable accommodations. So I saw that Quebec came out, for example, and said they're not going to fire their nurses, they're going to use rapid testing. I think that's the kind of reasonable accommodation we're talking about. I think when it comes to Canadians who shortly won't be able to take a plane or train or cross the land border, they'll be essentially trapped in their own country, which is against their inherent right to leave and enter Canada. We need to find a reasonable accommodation there, and that is part of the work that this group will do.
Well, as you say, your party stance is that vaccines are safe and you want Canadians to get vaccinated, but the work you just described is advocating accommodation for people who are choosing not to get vaccinated. So again, I'm going to put that question to you. Are you guys the voice of the anti-vaxxer movement in Canada?
Not at all. In fact, one of the first actions of our caucus has been to call for the removal of the PCR test requirement for double vaxxed asymptomatic people. The medical experts are saying it's unwarranted. Our U.S. partners are not requiring it, and it's costly and burdensome. So we're hearing from constituents that we need to do that, and that'll be one of our first actions.
But you're also looking to find accommodation for people who are not going to follow those vaccine mandates because they choose to, not because of any sort of medical issue here. So again, are you not using your time in Ottawa to advocate for the anti-vaxxers?
No, I would argue that there are some people who, in fact, were granted a medical exemption originally, and then the Royal College of Physicians has restricted doctors from issuing any kind of exemption except when there's an anaphylactic shock reaction. And so there are some who do have other concerns. We know that there are some risks, although vaccines are inherently safe. There are people that are concerned. There are people that have cited, religious reasons, and so for those individuals, we have to keep in mind. In my riding, for example, they've let go a bunch of people who were medical workers on the front lines. And when nobody was vaccinated, they were wearing N95 masks and face shields and gowns and gloves, and there's no evidence that the COVID was being transmitted from them. And so, I prefer the Quebec model of saying, let's rapid test these folks to ensure that they're safe. Yes, it should be at their cost, I believe. And that's a reasonable accommodation.
Ms. Gladu, you're talking about frontline workers who are wearing protective gear, PPE, at a time when vaccines were not available. Medical experts in this country and around the world say vaccines are the safest way to get us out of this pandemic. They say they are safe and effective. And the way you're talking about these issues, it sounds as if you're advocating for the anti-vaxxer movement. Are you concerned that this issue is dividing your party right now, and perhaps that this is dangerous? Do you think it's dangerous what you're talking about right there? Are you casting doubt on vaccine efficacy?
Not at all. Our party has been clear that we're encouraging people to be vaccinated. And in Canada, we're in a reasonably good position. We have more than 80% that are vaccinated, and we continue to encourage that. But the reality is, there are others whose civil liberties are being infringed. And that's a concern. We're here to stand up for the rights and freedoms of everyone. And I think we can do that in a way that keeps everyone safe and helps us exit this pandemic and restore the economy, which is what everyone wants.
So much of the hesitancy around vaccines has been fueled by misinformation on social media. Do you see that as a concern as to why that there is so much hesitancy around vaccines?
I think this is exactly the reason, why we need to hear from all sides, from medical experts and that sort of thing, so that we can be part of the solution to raise the awareness, give the right information out there. This is the work normally that would be done by parliamentary committees, but because Justin Trudeau doesn't seem like he's in a hurry to get back to Parliament, we don't have that mechanism. And so we're trying to figure out how can we really look into these things at the detail level so that we can come with those right answers.
But should you not be, for people who are coming forward with concerns, they have concerns they don't want to get vaccinated, should you not be directing them to perhaps trust or talk with a trusted medical official like their family doctor? That is what we have heard from public health leaders during this crisis, that people who are hesitant, their recommendation is to have them talk to someone they trust in the medical profession who can provide them with facts. And it seems like what you want to do here, rather than perhaps direct them to credible information, that you're coming to Parliament to advocate for those who don't want to get vaccinated.
Well, that's a false narrative, absolutely. And the reality is, there are some cases like the new vaccine for children under 11 where there's no long-term impact data available. We really don't know. It may be fine, it may not be fine, and parents are concerned, and those are some of the answers they're looking for.
Are you stoking vaccine hesitancy by giving air to that?
I don't think so. I think, at this point, people that are vaccine hesitant have already made their minds up. I think we continue to encourage them. I think there's an opportunity for Canada, in fact, to get some of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I've heard from some of the folks in my riding that, that's something that would encourage them to get the vaccine. And I think that would be a good thing.
Who in your party is on board with you as part of this caucus?
Well, as I said, it's early days. We've only had a couple of meetings, so we're not sure who's firmly in and who's not. I'm sure once we hear the shadow minister appointments, people will be able to figure out, who's got the time to devote to an additional caucus and go from there. But could be between 15 and 30 folks that are hearing similar concerns and are interested to find solutions.
Have you spoken with Aaron O'Toole about this yet?
Yes, and I've spoken with his team. Certainly. I have always supported Aaron since he was elected the leader, and will continue to do so. And he sees this as just another one of these working groups that we have on numerous topics where, this is the work to get to the details, figure out what the recommendations are, and bring those back to caucus so that we can decide what our policy position will be.
So you're saying Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole is completely comfortable with this mini caucus within the Conservative caucus that is, working to get answers and clarity for people who choose not to be vaccinated?
Aaron has always supported the interests of caucus. We have these working groups, many different kinds. This is just another one of those. And there is a process that we have where, once we've talked to the experts and listened to the recommendations, that we would bring those back, and National Caucus will then take a decision and come with a position.
Do you anticipate any of your unvaccinated colleagues will try to enter the House of Commons on November 22nd?
I don't think so. And I would say that, the security guards will be at every entrance looking for people's vaccine passports. And so, certainly they're not going to be allowed entry. We've said we will respect the Board of Internal Economy ruling, although we will likely raise a point that we don't think that they are the ones who can decide rules of the House. We think members of Parliament decide that, and there would have been a different mechanism that should have been used, although the result may have been the same.
Will you be showing up in person on November 22nd at the House of Commons?
Oh, well, you will see on November 22nd.
You know what? I know that because this is an issue of public safety, can I just ask you again, will you be showing up on November 22nd rather than tease it out? Will you be here on November 22nd?
You know what, Katie, I have to really say that we've spent a lot of time trying to protect medical privacy rights in this country. And the purpose of that was to make sure that people weren't discriminated against based on their medical conditions. And so on a point of principle, that's why I'm not, telling people. It will be obvious to those that see me on November 22nd. It's obvious to some others now. And so all I will say is I'm standing on principle, and I think that's an important thing. We have freedoms and rights in this country, and we need to stand for those.
But this particular situation that we're facing right now is a public health it's a pandemic, it's a public health crisis, and the actions of others can infringe upon the health of the vulnerable. What people do, whether they get vaccinated or not, it has an impact on those around them and their community. Do you really think that this is the medical privacy issue to fight for here when we are in the middle of a public health crisis?
I think Canada has done a great job getting vaccinated, over 80%. I think we're putting measures in place to try to continue to protect people. As I said, I hope we will call for some reasonable accommodations. And, you know, I've encouraged people to get vaccinated, as my party has. It's definitely the way to keep from dying and to, you know, reduce your hospitalization rate to less than 5%. And I think that's a good thing.
Ms. Gladu, thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.